Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for this video. Today we're going to be talking about edging around a tree. So first off, let's talk about why we want to create an edge around a tree. And first and foremost, you're probably going to create an edge for looks. And secondly, you're going to create an edge because we want to use some mulch in order to control the moisture around the tree a little bit better. And if you just put this mulch on top of the existing grass there around the tree, then the grass is going to grow into that mulch. It's not going to have as nice of a look, and it's going to be a little bit harder to trim and mow around. So because of this, if we create an edge around the tree and kind of create a trench around that area, then the grass won't be able to grow into that trench area, and we'll have a nice defined edge, and you'll also be able to trim and mow around it a lot easier. So today I'm going to be working on a tree that I previously edged last year. It needs a little bit of maintenance now. We got some weeds growing and we need to get some new mulch on there and just define the edge a little bit better. So that's going to be my process today. If you're looking to start from scratch and you've never edged any of your trees before, I have a video that I completed last year that I will link in the description if you'd like to step by step from start to finish on how to do that for a tree that has not been edged previously. But if you just want to redefine the edge on your tree or maybe a landscape bed in your yard, that's what I'm going to be doing today. So let's talk about the tools that you're going to need in order to complete this process. Something that'll be handy to start out with would be some kind of rake. It can be a hand rake, it can be a little bit larger rake, but we need to pull all of that old mulch around the old edge away from there and kind of dig that out a little bit so we can see what kind of edge we have left, and then we're going to redefine this area. Secondly, if you have some weeds like I have, it's nice to use a weed pulling tool for some of the more stubborn weeds that won't come out easily. You don't necessarily need this as long as you pull out most of the weeds and then we cover this with mulch. It's going to hold down most of the weeds anyway, and they're not going to come back as easily, but you'll still get a few that come back. So just a simple weed pulling tool helps a little bit in this area. Next thing, and probably the most important tool, is to have something that's going to redefine our edge, something that's going to cut the edge sharp. I like to use this edging tool that I bought last year. I'll have a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. It works very, very well to create an edge around the tree or around your landscape beds, and it's very easy to use. If you don't have a tool like this, you're going to want to use some kind of flat shovel or a spade. Just make sure that it's sharp so you can create a nice defined edge. Then after this is done, you probably have a string trimmer or weed eater of some kind if you're working in your yard. So you can use that around the tree to kind of trim things up. Otherwise, if you don't have something like that, or actually what I like to do is use a scissors on the first cut. This is going to cut all the grass around that edge line really nicely for the first cut. After that, I normally use a string trimmer to keep things trimmed around that area. But the first time you can do it manually the old-fashioned way, and I find that that works well. One last thing you might need is just some kind of way to remove any of the excess dirt or grass that we're taking out as we redefine this edge. So you might need some kind of lawn bags or disposal bags to use. However you do it in your area, just make sure to properly recycle this. And then this isn't really a tool, but at the end you're going to want to put down some kind of mulch. I just picked up some from Lowe's. You can kind of use whatever you prefer to use in your area, color-wise and product-wise, whatever you like. But we'll put a fine layer of mulch down after we get this edge complete. First thing I'm going to do on my tree is remove all of these weeds that are there right now. You may not have this problem, you might have a layer of mulch still there. Most of mine has washed away or has kind of degraded over the year. I'm just going to remove these by hand, trying to get as much of them out of the way as possible. And if you need to use that weed removal tool for some of the more stubborn weeds, you can use that as well. Otherwise, I'll just be hand pulling. Once we have that completed, I'm going to take my rake along the existing edge and remove all of that mulch that's there. I'm just going to pull this out from the edge and see what kind of edge we have existing there, and then see what kind of mulch we have left. Once we have that old mulch away from the edge, then you can kind of decide if you want to get rid of that mulch or keep it to put back on once we finish this edge. That's kind of up to you depending on how much it's degraded over the year or how old it is. We're also not going to use a huge amount, so if you have an excess amount, you might want to remove some of this at this point. From here I'm going to use my existing edge as a guide and cut a new line all the way around the tree with my edging tool. This tree has gotten a little bit larger over this year, so I can continue to move this edge a little bit farther. The only thing you want to be careful with when you are cutting this edge is you don't damage any of the existing tree roots. So watch for those as you're cutting and don't go too crazy putting a whole lot of pressure down on the cut. If this edging tool is sharp on its own, then it should create a nice edge without putting too much of your own weight on it. So go all the way around the tree, creating that nice defined edge. It's going to give us a nice 90-degree angle there, and then we'll work on digging our trench. Once you've created your new edge line, now you can remove all that excess dirt and grass that's there. This is going to reveal our new edge, and then we're going to do a little bit of redefining on the existing soil. I like to just lightly rake this soil to make sure we have a nice slope from the tree trunk all the way down to the trench. We want to do this so that water runs off properly and we don't have a bunch of water pooling on the middle area of the trunk. So create a nice gentle slope down to the trench. Now that we've cut the new edge and removed the soil, I like to cut the existing grass there and trim it a little bit with my scissors at this point, because any of the grass that falls into this new mulch area can be covered with new mulch and you're not going to see it. If you do this afterwards, it's not a problem, but you're going to have some of those grass clippings fall into the new mulch, and just looks wise it's not going to look quite as nice. At this time, after you've cut that grass, if you also have a string trimmer or a weed eater of some kind, I like to go around the whole edge of the tree, again making sure that any clippings that go in there are going to be covered by the new mulch. So this is a good time to do that step as well. From here you can add a light layer of new mulch, and you want to keep this away from the trunk area at least a couple inches so that it's not resting up against the trunk and getting things too wet in that area. Slope it down again towards the edge of that trench, but make sure the mulch doesn't pile up too much in the trench. If you pile it up too much and it gets to a level of the grass, then again we're kind of having a problem of the grass growing into that trench line. Make sure that there's a gap there so that the grass doesn't begin to inch itself back into that mulch. One thing to mention with that mulch as well is that you'll probably see a lot of people pile on the mulch really thick, at least a couple inches, sometimes even more than that, all the way up the trunk. You don't want to do this because it can actually smother the tree, and what the tree does then is it begins to send its roots up instead of out, and you'll see them start to swirl around the trunk and it can actually suffocate the tree there. So you don't want to do that. You want just a light layer of mulch, maybe an inch or two at the most, and make sure it's even out and that you're not getting piles of mulch there, and especially up against the trunk. So now at this point you had a tree that went from looking like this to looking like this. Not only does it look a lot better, but it's going to help you mow and trim around it a lot easier. And we're helping the tree by keeping some weeds down and keeping some moisture exactly where it needs it. So that is the process for redefining the edge around the tree. You could do the same process if you have this kind of edge on your landscape beds. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. And thank you very much for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.